Released in 1994, 1 year before I was born, Sonic 3 came out. In truth, it wasn't a full game as the developers had envisioned. Cartridge manufacturing costs as well as insufficient memory made Sega divide the complete experience into 2 cartridges. How did they circumvent this issue? They developed lock-on technology. When Sonic & Knuckles was released, it came in a cartridge whose top you could pull back and insert another game into. What happened when you inserted another game into the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge depended on the game itself. If you plugged in Sonic 1, you'd get an endless procedurally generated version of Blue Spheres, this game's special stage. If you plugged in Sonic 2, you gained the ability to play as Knuckles in Sonic 2. Neat! However, if you plugged Sonic 3, you'd be presented with possibly the best 2D Sonic game and one of my favorite platformers of all time, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It's a stupid name, but it didn't matter. Considered by many to be the best Sonic game, and by others to be the best platformer, Sonic 3 and Knuckles gave us the biggest adventure yet. So instead of asking whether it holds up or if it's any good, let's figure out exactly what made this game so fantastic. Welcome to my intergalactic arcade. I'm your host Rocket, and today I'll be doing a retrospective on Sonic 3 for the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis. Let's dive in. Before we begin, if you haven't yet, I suggest watching my other videos on the classic era saga. Comparisons and such will be made between the titles, so be ready for that. And now for your regularly scheduled program. Sonic 3 from the beginning had great shoes to fill, as the series was at an all-time high following the success of Sonic 2 and the experimentation of Sonic CD. For as much as I like Sonic CD, I'm thankful they didn't go with the ideas of the Japanese branch of Sega, as they don't quite fit the gameplay focus of our main character as well as Sonic 2's did. This means we're back to a more horizontal level design. However, in my opinion, Sonic 3 has probably the best balance of mechanics, level design, and enemy placement, all tailored to making this game the series' best experience. Level-wise, this installment has the most memorable stages in the series so far. One of the levels I dislike is Carnival Night, for the simple fact that it's a marathon level. To this day, and aside from Eggman Land and Unleashed, this remains the only time in the series where I've run out of time. People complain about Sandopolis being too big, but am I missing something? Sandopolis never gave me any shit during my playthroughs. The ghosts can be infuriating, but Sandopolis? Really? Nevertheless, this time around the number of good levels far exceeds the bad ones. Angel Island remains to this day my favorite opening level of any Sonic game, or any platformer for that matter. Hydrocity is my favorite water level, Lava Reef and Sky Sanctuary are fantastic as well, and Ice Cap has one of the most defining openings to a level in the series. I do dislike Marble Garden though. The layout is confusing and the enemies are annoying. Although it has one of my favorite boss fights, using Tails' flight ability to defeat Robotnik. And would you look at that, a fortress level that I actually enjoy. Death Egg. Sonic 3, unlike its direct predecessors, strikes a beautiful balance between horizontal and vertical design. The levels are tall and long, you're rewarded for exploration with the game's many power-ups, and best of all, it doesn't make you go out of your way through some convoluted method just to access special stages. More on that later. While we're at it, let's talk about the soundtrack. Do I even have to say anything? I have no other words to describe it than brilliant. The level themes are memorable, recognizable, thematic, and sometimes downright badass. My favorites being Angel Island, Hydrocity, Lava Reef, and Sky Sanctuary. I don't have a distaste for any of the compositions, if we're talking about the original Sonic 3 OST. You see, for the longest time it was a mystery whether Michael Jackson had worked on it. If you ask me, it was no mystery. Have you heard the Sub-Boss, Carnival Night, and Launch Base themes? Come on! However, due to copyright issues, and Michael Jackson reportedly saying the sound chip was crap, despite having made a game about himself on the same system, they had to change the OST in later releases of the game. The result was fine. Some of the replacements for the MJ-era tracks were fine, while others were pretty bad. The biggest example of the latter being Carnival Night. Oof. The set pieces and sprites received a major overhaul compared to the previous games, looking more refined and detailed, all while elevating the game's overall energy. Graphics-wise, Sonic 3 is the prettiest game of the classic era. As far as 2D Sonic games go, I think Mania looks even better, but that's for a later video. This game not only brings back Sonic, Tails, and Robotnik, but also introduces a brand new character, Knuckles the Echidna. Echidna only in name though. No matter how you paint it, he looks absolutely nothing like an actual echidna. But I think we can suspend our disbelief. To talk more about Knuckles, we should probably talk about the game's plot. Picking up right after the ending of Sonic 2, Super Sonic and Tails arrive at Angel Island to stop Robotnik from getting the Death Egg up and running again. But out of nowhere, Knuckles uppercuts Super Sonic, making him lose the Chaos Emeralds, which are promptly retrieved by Knuckles. Knuckles is in cahoots with Robotnik, as the latter told him our heroes were after the Sacred Master Emerald, which is conveniently guarded by Knuckles. Your objective is to collect the Chaos Emeralds and stop Robotnik, as per usual. I like how the story is a bit more involved and has a clear continuity between games. I felt Sonic 1 didn't clearly lead into Sonic 2 or Sonic CD for that matter, so this is a pretty big plus for Sonic 3. Of course, being essentially 2 games in one, Sonic 3 is double the length of the other entries I've covered so far. That means more and longer stages, as well as a progressive narrative throughout. Knuckles' inclusion felt natural, and his storyline with Robotnik added quite a bit of depth compared to previous installments. Gameplay-wise, not a lot has changed for Sonic. He can jump the highest of the roster, and he can spin dash like in Sonic 2. This time around though, he gains 2 new abilities that help differentiate him from the other playable characters, the Insta Shield and the Elemental Shields. By jumping and pressing the jump button again mid-air, Sonic can perform the Insta Shield. This creates a very small window where Sonic is invincible, perfect for dealing with spiky enemies, assuming you have good timing. The Elemental Shields are power-ups that, much like lives in the normal shield, you obtain by breaking monitors with their respective symbols. First we have the Bubble Shield. It allows you to breathe underwater indefinitely, repels some projectiles, and lets Sonic bounce by double jumping. Then we have the Fire Shield. This one makes you invulnerable to fire hazards, and if you double jump, Sonic performs a dash maneuver. Finally, we have the Electricity Shield, the best shield in my opinion. It makes you invulnerable to electricity hazards, repels some projectiles, magnetizes rings towards Sonic, and gives you a proper double jump. Perfect when used in super form. Overall, these abilities are a perfect evolution of Sonic's gameplay, made even better by the fact that Sonic is the only character who can fully take advantage of the double jump abilities I mentioned. Tails' biggest difference from Sonic 2 is that he can finally fly. Yep, our favorite flying fox can finally fly. This ability essentially makes him the game's easy mode, assuming Sonic is the normal mode. Aside from flight, Tails can still spin dash and use the passive effects of the Elemental Shields. Neat. Knuckles, though, is where things get interesting. First off, he gets his own campaign, which takes place after the events of Sonic and Tails' story. Playing as Knuckles, your goal is to stop Mecha Sonic Mark II from taking control of the Master Emerald, which culminates in Knuckles fighting a super version of the robot. That alone is already pretty neat, but then you realize there are paths across the game's many levels that are exclusive to the Echidna, usually blocked off by walls of boulders he can punch through with little effort. Knuckles' main abilities are gliding and wall climbing. You'd think the latter alone would break the game in half, but oh boy. First off, he has the shortest jump of the cast. Second, his exclusive paths are extremely treacherous, filled to the brim with tight climbing and gliding sections, plus spikes everywhere. All of this makes Knuckles' campaign the game's hard mode. I played it for the first time to record gameplay for this video, and I don't think I'll do it again unless it's for a stream or something of that nature. Despite my preferences, I can confidently say Knuckles added a lot to the game in the series, immediately distinguishing himself from the other playable characters both in gameplay and story. Earlier, I mentioned the Chaos Emeralds returning. Robotnik is trying to collect them, along with the Master Emerald, to power the Death Egg. This means super forms are back. To be more specific, Sonic and Knuckles get super forms, Tails, more on that later. Super Sonic behaves just like he did in Sonic 2, with the added effects of the Elemental Shields making him an absolute unit. The Electric Shield is especially helpful in keeping the form active by magnetizing nearby rings. As for Knuckles, he starts glowing pink and gains increased speed in running, gliding, and climbing. Simple, but effective. This is where it gets interesting. When you reach the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game, at the start of Mushroom Hill, you see Knuckles exiting a cave and sealing it with a button on the ground. If you enter the cave, you're taken to the Master Emerald's altar. If you've collected all 7 Chaos Emeralds, they're taken away from you and placed into their respective slots. From then on, every time you find a special ring, you're brought back to the altar, where you can jump into one of the Super Emeralds' special stages to charge them. Once all of them are charged, you obtain the Super Emeralds, unlocking even stronger transformations. First we have Hypersonic. This transformation has never returned since this game, for some reason. Well, I understand that the rapidly flashing colors could cause epilepsy concerns, but why not just change the visual presentation? Maybe use a fixed color scheme like in the official art. Regardless, Hypersonic keeps everything Supersonic has, but double jumping now causes the screen to flash, resulting in a full on-screen nuke. And he can survive underwater without needing air bubbles. That's one hell of an incentive to collect every emerald. Knuckles also gets the Hyper treatment. In this form, he functions similarly to Hypersonic, but with his own twist. Slamming into walls or the ground while gliding triggers a shockwave attack that acts as his own screen nuke. Finally, if you thought Hypersonic and Knuckles were powerful, let me introduce you to Super Tails. He can run faster, jump higher, and fly faster. He doesn't get a screen nuke though, because he has a freaking flicky army on his side. Basically, Tails manipulates chaos energy to supercharge his flicky friends. In this state, you don't even need to actively attack enemies or bosses, the birds do it for you. This is exactly what I mean when I say some of the other games desperately needed better incentives for going out of your way to collect the emeralds. To top it all off, let's talk about the special stages. Next to Sonic 1 and Sonic CD's methods, Sonic 3's approach might be the best. As you explore each level, you naturally stumble upon small nooks containing special rings. There's no ring requirement, no convoluted exploration, no bullshit. This is how it's done. And to make it even better, the Blue Sphere special stages here are the best in the classic era by a long shot. I genuinely wish they'd stop reusing the half-pipe from Sonic 2 and use this instead. They're fun, challenging without being hair-pullingly frustrating, and easy to understand. To cap this retrospective off, and still on the topic at hand, Sega finally fixed how you transform into the Super and Hyper states. In Sonic 2, you'd go Super just by jumping while holding 50 rings, which was infuriating. This time around though, you have to double jump to activate it. It's a small improvement, but one I think we can both agree was long overdue. And now, it's time for the final verdict. Sonic 3 is one of the most celebrated and beloved games among platformer enthusiasts, and for good reason. It's what many consider to be the ultimate form of 2D Sonic. From the improved graphics to the added gameplay features, there's not a single thing I can point to and say, that's hot garbage. Not even close. That's not to say it's a perfect game, at least not to me. I dislike Carnival Night, Knuckles' campaign isn't all that good, and the soundtrack changes were less than ideal, but man, what an adventure. Sonic 3 in its full length is the biggest of the games covered so far, which isn't saying much as the other entries can be finished in around 1 to 1.5 hours. Still, it's the most epic and well put together of the bunch, so S tier it is. Do I like it more than Symphony of the Night? I like them at nearly the same level but for different reasons. Sonic 3 is easier to pick up and play, but I do generally prefer Metroidvanias to platformers. So let's put Sonic 3 and Knuckles in second place, right after Symphony of the Night. As it stands, this game is a must-play for anyone who's into platformers, or for those who like Sonic in general. All of these games are available on multiple platforms and in multiple versions. They're practically impossible to miss. If anything, I recommend getting your hands on a copy of Sonic Origins. Same games but with a lot of quality of life improvements. With that, I conclude this set of retrospectives on the classic era of Sonic the Hedgehog. I encourage you to share which game you like the most down in the comments section below. Next time, I'll be covering the Portal series. Look forward to that because I know I am.